Gordon. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir Shabar. I'm the chair of the Toronto Center of CMOS. Today's speaker is Dr. Aitaf Arain. He's a professor in the School of Earth, Environmental, and Society at McMaster University. He's also the science research chair in environmental sustainability and climate change. His research interests include hydrometeorology, evapotranspiration, forest carbon and water cycles, land surface atmosphere interaction scheme, eco-hydrological and global climate models. He has established a vibrant multidisciplinary ecosystem restoration and environmental sustainability research program that explores the interaction and feedbacks between biogeochemical and hydrological cycles in forest ecosystem. Dr. Arain research also focused on developing integrated biogeochemical and hydrological modeling systems and land surface schemes using Canadian climate models to improve their predictive capabilities. He has published over 200 peer-reviewed journal papers and has been cited among Clarivate Analytic Web of Science top 100%, top 1% of highly cited research in science and social sciences. Today's topic is heat, drought, and disturbance impact on carbon sequestration in eastern temperate forest ecosystem. So whenever you're ready, Aitaf.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction and welcome everyone. So as you can see on the title slide, my topic is listed. We will be looking carbon cycle and extreme events in eastern temperate forest. And the picture that you see is one of our site. That's a deciduous, Carolinian deciduous forest. So that's one of our site. So before we start and talk about the forest carbon cycle, it would be good to look at the context, why we want to look at the carbon cycle and why we are interested. So the climate change is the major challenge that we are facing nowadays. So the graph on the left-hand side. So do you see my arrow? When I move the arrow, do you see it or you don't see it?
We see it.
You are able to see the arrow?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So so the temperature is rising. So we are all aware. Most of us have seen these pictures. These pictures or these figures are from the most recent IPCC AR6 report that was released earlier this year. So the temperatures are increasing because of the greenhouse gases. So the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, they all show the increase. And then we also see the temperature increase at a very rapid, almost alarming rate. We see it. Then once in a, so here, it shows us the annual. So once in a while, we have these extreme events like El Nino, La Nina. When there is a El Nino, we have a little bit higher warming. We have a La Nina, we have a little bit cooler events, but overall the trend is very consistent going forward at a very alarming rate. So we are at 421 ppm. This is most recent March data from Mauna Loa. So that's our numbers right now. And then if you move forward, so this record is not just coming from one location or the one data set. Most of the data set, many different disciplines, they are pointing towards the same kind of thing. The air temperatures, so this is from sea level temperature, air temperature, marine temperature, sea level rise is there, sea ice is shrinking, so glacier balance is decreasing, so humidity, atmospheric humidity is increasing. So all indicators from many different data sets, many different researchers, they point to the same thing, a very rapid accelerated warming. So because of the warming, we are also having acceleration of the hydrologic cycle, where we have higher evapotranspiration and more precipitation. So acceleration of the hydrologic cycle is changing our precipitation patterns, the drought patterns, the extreme events. So we have more flooding coinciding with the drought in many different regions. So consequently, this has a large impact on the society in terms of the disasters and also on the ecosystems in terms of their productivity and the food chain. So you name it. So these all impacts are going. There is evidence from the recent events that how they may impact the society. So these extreme events can have many different changes are happening to extreme events, and they will be happening more in the future as we go forward. So intensity and magnitude may change. The frequency may change as well. The duration of these extreme events may change. And also the seasonality may shift, and their onset, like a growing season and onset of the events or the snow melt can change. So this can be temporal and spatial context. So the data tells us that we can have a significant increase in the intensity of the events. Here precipitation for 1.5 degrees C projected warming, or 2 degrees C, that we are trying to achieve these two numbers, but we are going towards the 4 degree at our current rate. So you can see how much the intensity may change if we go to this kind of scenario, like 3 to 4 degrees C warming. And also it will have impact on the events that used to happen at 100-year time frame. This is where we have most of the infrastructure and our current system designed with past 100-year data. So these events will become like a 40-year or maybe 50 year. So the probability of the occurrence would be much more and much sooner because of these events. And so one example was this. So we did some work and we published on this kind of topic as well in the Southern Ontario extreme events. So this was February 21, 2018 flooding, very early because of the high pressure zone moving in, and then it causes the early flooding when the ground is still frozen, but the precipitation would cause flooding in many areas. So these kind of things we are already seeing in our region in many other parts. So where we are going, this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, emission, as we know, mostly they're from the fossil fuel industry or the fossil fuel burning. So that's the color here. But the land use change is also here. So this is like a land use change related emissions there. But primarily, these are the greenhouse gas emissions are from the fossil fuel use. But where this atmospheric carbon eventually end up into 3 different pools. So some will stay in the atmosphere, almost 1/3. So we have increase in atmospheric CO2 concentration, but the land sink is also very significant. So almost like 25% to 30% is going into the land, and the 1/3 almost is going to the ocean. So these are 3 areas where the CO2 ends up in the ocean and the land, and the remaining in the atmosphere. So we don't want this in the atmosphere. We want it either in the ocean or we want in the land, biological or in any other form. So that's where we want to have it. So this is recent data. So really 2022 is there. So this is CO2 increase. You can see in the upper a very steady increase, and we can see here a dip because of the COVID. So this is COVID related, but after COVID now almost back to normal. The trend is kind of a normal there, the red dot. So that's our CO2 emissions right now. And then land sink, we can see the steady increase in the land sink. There's a lot more interannual variability, but the trend is very kind of upward, where we are having a significant carbon going into the land sinks there. And then also, this is the atmospheric growth. At the same time, atmosphere CO2 is increasing, and then the ocean sink is also 1/3 almost going into the ocean sink as well. So less variability as compared to the land, but these are the trends that we are seeing here. So the IPCC is suggesting almost very strongly every few years. They are advocating. The Paris Agreement was there. We went for like to stabilize climate change at 2 degrees C, but later on this year, IPCC is advocating that we have to achieve 1.5 degrees C, and we are already at 1.1 degrees C. So the suggestion is that it's the urgency, because we are at 1.1 degree and our goal is 1.5 degrees. So there's not much time left. So different nations have committed 2030 their carbon reduction goal, and some have very longer term, 2050 or 2070, they will achieve net zero emissions. But IPCC is suggesting that we may not hit these targets, and then we have to act sooner on them. So this graph is pretty much showing this thing. So the trend for the implemented policy, we are on this red trajectory right now. And then if you want to go 1.5, then this is the blue line here. If you want to go 2 degrees C, so that's another darker blue, or the green line there. 2030 is here. So it may be too late there to achieve these targets if we want to achieve to 1.5 degrees C. So this shows the urgency, and this shows how we can achieve and where we are going right now. So the implemented policies are going in this way. Then if you want to look at the pathways that has been suggested, so the pathways to the transition to the net zero CO2 emissions. So if you look at these 3 different color lines, then there's a transport, industry, and the building. And then there is an energy supply. This is electricity generation and other supplies. And then the green line is the land use change. So these are the 3 major factors. So the land use change can be achieved very quickly here. This trajectory shows here. So 2030 is here. So that is like a target that can be achieved earlier as compared to the other. So electricity generation can also be achieved earlier, while transportation and industry and building will take a long time to achieve net zero emissions. So this can be here one pathway that can be achieved. So 2019 is the current distribution. So the green is the land use related things, and then the electricity and the transportation. So going forward, these may be different ways to achieve net zero emission. So here we increase the sinks in the land use change and other sectors. There are different actions that we can take, gradually strengthening and high reliance on net negative emissions, high reliance on efficient resource use, focus on sustainable development, focus on the renewables. So these are different ways, but you can, the one thing is that the green is there in the negative in almost every pathway that has been suggested here. It means the land use change, forestry, these biological carbon sinks are very important in future scenarios. They can play a key role there. So that's the emphasis we can get, a message we can get here for their importance there. And then if terms of the atmospheric CO2 renewal methods, so these are different renewals, what we can suggest. So the big circle here is basically biological things here. And this is afforestation, reforestation, forest management, soil carbon sequestration. Forest put a lot of carbon into soil, biochar, peat restoration, and blue carbon. We are doing the trades, carbon trade offsets. So this is a large. So the blue dot here, full blue dot, means this area is a large removal method, a significant removal method, and it can be more than 3 gigaton of CO2 per year. So that's very, very, very significant afforestation, reforestation, the carbon uptake, while soil can also take a lot of carbon. But this is comparable to the other kind of suggestions we have here: bioenergy and carbon capture, direct air carbon capture. So these are also the blue dots there. And there's some ocean, but the time frames, the uncertainty, untested systems, the cost required are very different as compared to the planting trees and not cutting the forest and enhancing the soil carbon. They're proven and well-tested method for centuries. But if you look here, on far side, there are co-benefits. All green colors are a lot of co-benefits to the society related here. So the green means this is co-benefit here. So the water quality, water quantity, food supply, biodiversity. So there are a lot of other benefits to the society. So this slide highlights the importance of this area. Then going forward, so where are the forests and how much forests we have? So this shows North America and the Canada. So in USA, the forest cover is 304 million hectare, 30% area, land area is covered with the forest. And in Canada, there are more, 397 million hectares, and 40% of our area is covered by the forest. And in terms of the carbon sinks, this is like 170 gigatons of carbon. It's not CO2, it's carbon. So a lot of carbon is there in live biomass and also the soil carbon pool in this forest. So very, very significant pool there. In terms of the sink, like 50% of North American terrestrial carbon sink is due to the regrowth of the forest. A lot of forests in the eastern North America are going back. The land is converting either plantation, either natural regrowth. The trees are growing, so a significant portion of the carbon is taken by these forests. So in Canada, 230 million hectare, like 57% of the forest are managed or regrowth forests. So this all green color in this picture are the managed forests, and unmanaged forests are these northern areas. The northern light blue band is like unmanaged forest, but in southern latitudes, all the forests, 57% of these forests are the managed. So then we can ask the question that how much greenhouse gas emission may be offset by this regrowth of this forest, and whether their sink will be impacted by the climate change, because there is a large, more interannual variability. If we know the impact of this interannual variability, then we can make more informed decision. We can plan longer time rather than this year is off or this year is gain. So we can look at the longer gains from this longer time frame for the carbon gain in these forest ecosystems. So for this contribution, so I will show you, this is our Turkey Point Observatory that we are doing our research. We have 5 flux tower sites. These are like a young forest that we planted in 2002. There is a 48, almost 50-year forest. There's an 83-year conifer. So these are 3 different ages of the conifer sites. And this is a deciduous site here that we plant. And then we started this agriculture site in 2020. So we cover almost all the major land use types in our area: conifer forest, deciduous forest, and the agriculture landscape. Turkey Point is located here, this flux tower site, but we have other sites in British Columbia or all over Canada, and there's also a Borden site just north to us. So this is like a FluxNet. They were under the FluxNet Canada and afterward Global Water Futures Program. But we have quite a handsome or good number of sites across the Canada where we have this kind of measurements. And then we use, at these sites, we use the eddy covariance system. These are closed path eddy covariance systems at the tower. So this system was developed originally as part of the FluxNet Canada. Andy Black's group has developed. So we are using Andy Black's method or the system developed, and they are still helping us to operate and manage and quality control. So this was a universal system that we use across the Canada, is still being used. The similar methods or same methods at many different sites as of today. Then apart from the eddy covariance flux tower sites, we have done many other site studies as well. Biometric estimation, sap flow, tree water use, carbon, soil carbon, nutrient analysis, isotopic analysis. We have used drone for phenology and remote sensing studies. We have done the thinning experiments, and we have done like a catchment scale hydrological and then biological studies as well. So more than 100 papers have been published using these data sets over time on our forest sites. This is a trajectory of net ecosystem productivity from all the sites. So all forest sites here. So we can see gradual increase in net carbon uptake over time as the forests are going pretty stable here for 83, but the younger stands are growing. They're taking carbon, and most interestingly, this is 20-year forest is very rapidly has become a carbon sink, or the large carbon flux is there. And this is deciduous forest, pretty much stable there. And you can see this year, this 2021 year is slightly different. I'll be talking about it. So climate variability, we look at climate variability, the heat, temperature, vapor pressure deficit, individual years. And then we look at the seasonality as well, what happens in particular months and what happens over a year. Some years are dry, some years are wet, but most importantly, when this drought happened and how long it lasted, that's more important rather than the annual number here. So this is our carbon flux. This is cumulative carbon flux for each site. This is 39, 80-year-old stand, 50-year-old stand. This is deciduous stand. They all start fairly at the same time, like April 15 or April 20, you can see around the leaves are coming out. So when the leaves come out, the flux is becoming to be still, there's a more coming from the ground, but now there's a positive trend is there. So sometime here in the May, the forest will become a net carbon sink, and then it will go to take on the carbon until October, and then they decline in the same fashion. So you can see the slope of this decline. They're very, very similar after October, and they're very similar in the winter. So what happens in this period is very important. And this, the largest sink that we have is at 50-year-old forests. So they are like 8 tons per hectare that you can see here. And this forest here, 8-year stand is like 4 ton to somewhere between 1 ton per hectare. But this younger forest can go up to 8 ton, and minimum is like here about 2 tons per hectare. So this deciduous forest is more like 2 ton, and it goes to 3.5 tons. This is the deciduous, and very, very tight and less interannual variability at the deciduous. So 2021, we had this insect infestation at the site. So the site was not a carbon sink, rather it was a source of carbon. So you can see this line here. This is actual line. This is real data. So 3.5 tons of carbon per hectare was lost from the site. So I'll talk about the infestation in a moment, but I'm zooming into this figure. For this figure, I'm zooming in. So that's like this is the figure I'm zooming in for 83-year-old stand. So this period is very important. So whatever happened in this early period, like a July, sort of July there, like a June and July, at this point, whatever happens at this point is very, very important, because that will basically decide your annual carbon sink. So these 2 top lines, there's no decline in early growing season period there. So there's no decline here. So, and then in some other years, if you have a drought or a heat event in this period for 2 months, so you can see this decline here, and that will basically impact your annual. So for us, there's a short growing season, but that's very important what happens in this time period, because that will decide the fate of your annual carbon sink in the conifer forest. So this is the infestation. So this was a record event in 2021, and this event was widespread, almost southern Ontario and parts of Quebec, and also in the US, some parts were covered or impacted. So this site provides us a very good data that what really happened and how much carbon went. So this is like a PAR. So we can see the PAR is higher, the below canopy PAR in this year. And that's our infestation. So it was, I've showed it earlier, but now it's zooming in. So the forest was 3.5 tons per hectare source, and it started like a normal. Then this infestation basically impacted, and later on the fall trajectory is almost as the other because the leaves are gone. But this period, the forest could not recover. So we are monitoring how the long-term impacts may be. But this information gives us, we can scale back in Ontario, like how much in the future, if this kind of event happen, then how much loss may happen. These flux data are very valuable in that terms. So it was not just the GEP that was impacted, but it was also the RE. So we have higher RE, like our respiratory losses from the trees and the soil. They were higher. This is our mean for this period, 28-year mean, but also the impact was because of the low GP and higher RE at the same time. So what is the impact overall this event? How much dent this 3.51 may cause? So the annually over like a 9 years, 10 years, the site was about 2 tons per hectare of carbon here. But because of this 1 year, it dropped to about 1.5 hectare tons per hectare as well. So the 1 year caused some significant dent, but it's still the site is a carbon sink. And this is the conifer site is like about 2 tons per hectare. So they are kind of similar here. So other important thing now, apart from this carbon in terms of the water, so what other impacts we see, or what other kind of interesting feature we see? These conifer stands have the hydrologic redistribution. They are taking the water from the deeper soils and they are redistributing in the upper soil. So this is a mechanism these pines used to offset the drought impact. So it's good for the future. They will have some resilience for the drought. So we saw this the trend here, soil moisture, this change in the soil moisture is because of the hydrologic redistribution. So this was very interesting to see. And we also saw how these stands manage. So these stands can manage their water very, very nicely. So in the high VPD days, so the net loss of carbon is same in all 3 days, but this high VPD days, so the stomatas were closed, and then the forest utilized their evapotranspiration very efficiently. This is like a normal day, and this is where they close the stomata, and then they reduce their ET to cope with the drought and heat impacts. Very, very nice data. And then this is same here. The black dots are where high VPD, the soil moisture is this for the soil moisture rather than VPD. So in the drier soils, so that's the loss, and then the moisture, that's the trend. So this is a 2 different ways we see the same information, how the forest is behaving. So very nice, good, useful information that we have. We also did some sensitivity analysis on our long-term data. So basically, this tells us that the NEP and GP at the conifer site is more sensitive to the heat stress as compared to the deciduous site. So the heat is more important at the site rather than the drought. So this is the younger stands have more impact to the drought because they have a less established root system. The deciduous site is equally sensitive to the drought stress and the heat stress, so more resilient. So deciduous site is more resilient as compared to the carbon. We see the same kind of things here. We did this isotopic study. We see this red line is the heat stress over time. The heat stress is increasing over time. There's a more red in recent years. So there's a more red. So the heat stress is a significant factor for the carbon uptake in these stands. Water use efficiency, a lot of graphs here, but I will just point out to one of these graphs here. The water use efficiency for the conifer and deciduous is in the end the same. So the carbon magnitude may be slightly different, but the water use utilization, the water use efficiency is kind of similar. So the deciduous and conifer are behaving in a similar way, but as I showed you, they're about 2 tons of carbon sink per hectare per year. So this is very interesting graph here. So this is our data for a long term. These are annual values here. So these are like a heat stress, drought, and the combined heat, combined impact. So this is like, so if we have the consecutive heat our drought, our heat and drought happening in the same year, or one of them happening in a particular year, then we can have this decline in the conifer sites. So the red is the deciduous, is not impacted that much, apart from this infestation here. But for the conifers, the concurrent heat or consecutive or concurrent heat and drought impacts may be significant. And we see this, the sites behaving, these are different ages of the site, different system, they are behaving exact same way. So this was we were very glad to see different ages of the forest responding in a very, very similar way at 3 different sites. So this, in that way, this is a very, very valuable data. We may not have across the world this kind of data. So this is our essence in the end. So this is younger stand, a lot of variability apart from this heat and drought impact years. So this is like a developing here. But look at the 80-year forest here, some variability here in the recent, like a past 10 years, but it was very rapid increase in carbon over time for almost 10 years there. And we see this large variability in recent years when every year is like extreme year, but still there was some pattern there. So this 2 tons per hectare carbon sink in both older stands and up to 8. Despite this variability, interannual variability, the site is around 6 to 7 tons per hectare carbon sink. It's still a very, very large carbon sink. So we have published these results in this paper recently about the conifer forest sites and their sink and how they may be impacted. And this was our synthesis study in North America. So we analyzed the drought and heat stresses in the North American forest. So this was published in Global Change Biology, like 2019. Currently, we are looking at experimental studies. We want to study how the forest may be impacted, different management regimes, how they may impact the forest carbon. If going forward, what may be the best way to manage this forest? So this is our ongoing study. And then we found that distributed 55% retention, but distributed stand may be the best way to go for forest. So well distributed 55% retention will provide maximum benefit for carbon and then the water. And this paper has been published very, very recently. And then the conclusion here is the plantation forest become carbon sink within 4, 5, 6 years. Then the air temperature is a more kind of a control or dominant control in our region. The sensitivity of carbon flux to extreme event is highly dependent when these events may occur. But despite these events, there's a lot of potential in this forest to take up the atmospheric carbon. We have to look for consecutive occurrence of the events. They may have more impact. So for the going forward for the challenging, we need like a larger scale studies, and we need a process-based model because we need to upscale this information, and we want to improve these models. We want to integrate with atmospheric profile studies and other ecosystem modeling studies. We want to integrate the different disciplines, different researchers to look at the bigger picture. So these are the challenging for the scientific community. Many groups working on these things, including our group. So we work with Class C TEM. We developed carbon cycle and we tested this forest across the sites and also ran the global simulations. So these were published in 2016. This is used by ECC, this model. Currently, we are working on MASH classic model to apply the catchment scale. So this is work under development right now. And then we use like one of these thesis and the paper, the students are working on it. This is like initial results at the catchment scale studies that we have. So I'm not covering it, but I'm showing it. This is an ongoing work in our group to upscale at catchment scale across Canada in different catchments. So on the community outreach, we are establishing these forests in our backyard community. This is 1 hectare donated land where we are establishing a model forest, and it was picked by the David Suzuki Foundation as a showcase. So this is like a privately donated land. So we are working on this cause, and this is some of my lab group members are also there. So that's our ongoing work. So acknowledgement to all the people, in particular, and the Blacks group here, they have helped us for so long. So thank you very much. So that's all I have to say. So I will be happy to answer any questions.
So any question for Dr. Aitaf?
Aitaf, very wonderful presentation. And it was very pleasant to hear that there is some former agriculture land coming into forestation. Do we have some numbers for Canada or North America? How much agriculture, former agriculture land has come into forestation?
Yes, I think I cannot tell you the numbers, but a number I showed you, there are in our region, if you look at pre-settlement areas like 1800s, so 70% area, 70 to 80% area was forest in our landscape. So currently, the forest on average, if you look at the counties, except from some counties, the most counties are the most area in Southern Ontario and the US, they have like a 25%, 20% kind of forest cover, rest is the agriculture. So potentially, there is a lot of potential. So it's not possible for us to go back to that 70, 80% forest area in this region because there are cities, towns, and other things. But we have much room to bring this forest like a higher rather than. So where our flux tower sites are located, the forest cover over there is 25%, and that's the county which has the highest forest cover in whole Southern Ontario, like Southern Ontario I'm talking, not the boreal forest. So a lot of cities and a lot of counties now are saying that if we go like higher number than this will make a lot of difference. But I'm sure there will be the numbers like how much land may be available.
Thank you. I can ask one more question, which is about your sites on white pines. Whenever I look data for FluxNet Canada or any other papers, your white pine sites jump out to me that the NEP is pretty high, up to 800. And I always used to wonder, what are the main causes? You have sandy soils, organic matter content is low, so soil decomposition will be much lower. Is it a characteristic of the white pines that autotrophic respiration is much lower for this species? Yeah. Or another question related to this is, what's the cause of the high productivity? Where the nutrition comes from?
Yes. I think when we were establishing this site, so we looked at, we wanted to look at the site, the native plantation species. So the native white pine is a native species, and then its life, it can live up to 400 years, more than 400 years. And normally its height is twice as the deciduous species. If you travel north in the Georgian Bay area, so some people from Toronto will see these majestic trees. They're twice the height of the other trees. So, and this was the species that was sought after for the shipbuilding, and these trees were shipped back to Europe for the shipbuilding. So we were promoting this, and this is also sacred tree for the natives here. So they consider it a sacred tree. So I think, so the sandy soils are not like, and this also partly fire tolerant tree. So the sandy soils are not like they are adopted. They have mechanism to adopt these things. And so that's, and our decomposition rates, we are in the temperate zone. So this is the high productivity area. The decomposition is higher. So they partly supply the nutrients. Not all former lands are like a former agriculture lands, but there may be some are. So that can also be a factor because there is more nutrient available. But we are in a zone where nitrogen deposition is highest. It's almost like a 10 kilogram, like a nitrogen deficit CC. So that may also be helping the forest. When we are doing this synthesis study with Hank Margolis group, at that time, our sites were highest in that synthesis studies in that paper as well. So this is a combination of the species, combination of the area, and also we have a uniform distribution of precipitation. So we get precipitation almost like every month. So it's a well-distributed precipitation we also get.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Can I ask a question, Aitaf?
Yes. Hi, Andy. Nice
Yeah.
to see you.
Yeah, nice. Great talk. Yeah, very interesting. And I was going to ask a question similar to that Paul just asked, because it's really fascinating as to the productivity on that stand. And it'll be interesting if you continue to monitor that site, because on that graph, that nice graph you showed with the older stand coming down, I guess the question will be whether the actual stand that where you're getting the 8 tons, how that's gonna change over the next 30 years, because out here on the West Coast, we'll see NEP going up, probably up into the 80-year-old area, and then we get into the argument as to whether we should be whether it is still premature to harvest a stand of that age. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if you continue to monitor into the future on that stand.
Yes, the sites are funded until 2025, so we hope to monitor longer, because in terms of the length and the sites, we are among top 10 sites in the FluxNet. So we are already the site which has the longest, among the longest. So these are the 10 sites we're having the longest data. So then, yes, we will make effort. It depends on the funding, but right now the funding is secure 2025, and hopefully there will be more funding. So we'll continue to monitor. The 40-year or 48-year-old stand was thinned last year. So in January last year, we removed 1/3 of the trees. I have not shown the results, but there was no impact on the annual NEP. So we analyzed 2021 data. So thinning was done in January, February period. But then we analyzed the data at the end of the year. So it had almost no impact. So there was slight decrease, but that was within interannual variability. So it means despite the thinning, so this forest will keep on going at this kind of rate. So it will be interesting to see how long it goes, as you said, whether it will come down as 70 or it will go like a 60. So, but it was thin, so it may be helpful to the forest. But the interesting part is also how quickly the 20-year-old stand became a very large carbon sink. It's almost approaching the similar numbers at the 50-year-old stand had. So if you look at the numbers, they are almost becoming very, very similar. So that's also a very interesting part there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other question? Okay, I have one question, and maybe you can comment on that. You did not touch on the forest fires and how that impacts the carbon sink and so on, especially in the unmanaged part of the Canadian forest. You know, fire may be burning and there is no management of that. I mean, we've seen some devastating fires in the interior of BC, for example, in recent years. And so I just like for you to maybe some comment on how that affects the carbon sink. And, you know, I mean, those forests are gone for a long period of time if they're burned. And so what is the recovery and so on?
Yes, yes, I can comment on the forest fire. So apart from this is disturbance is the major disturbance are infestation, insect infestation, and the forest fires. So these are the major infestations. So we saw a lot of infestation, mountain pine beetle in the west some time ago. With the warmer climate and then more drought events, forest fires can be a catastrophic loss of carbon. That is true. But on the other hand, there may be also an opportunity in the end. So you lose this carbon, then there will be a regrowth as well. It may take some time, but then forest can also regrowth. But the key is the management. So if you manage your forest in a proper way, then you can use with the aim of the carbon utilization and harvesting. So that will help to reduce the intensity of the fires. It's basically the availability of the fuel. So a significant portion, like 57% of the Canadian forests are already managed. So in the management equation, if you bring in the fire as well, how my management may also help me to reduce the intensity and the spread of the fire, then you can keep this carbon rather than losing it in the fire. You may harvest in a certain way. So there can be strategies there as well. But yes, the forest fire is a one factor that may impact. But it does not mean that we argue here that, oh yes, there are more forest fires and then let's not plant any tree, or let's not even consider the biological sink because, oh, forest will burn it, so why we should plant it? No, forest will burn. The fire has been there for centuries, and the fire has been useful for the forest as well. So how we manage that can be, and we can control the human incidence of the fire. A lot of fires in the near urban areas are also human caused. So if we delete them, then this may also be helpful.
Thanks. Okay, so if there are no further questions, it's nearly 1 p.m. So I would like to thank Dr. Aitaf Arain, and it was a quite interesting presentation on carbon in the forest, and we look forward to seeing your presentation on the YouTube channel on CMOS. We posted there, so if people are interested who may have missed part of it, then they can go to the website and have a look. So no further question, then, oh, there is one question from Ian Russell.
No, not at all. I was just clapping, just to say thank you.
Okay. So thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Ian.